Welcome to today's interview. I've brought on Pam Grout, a multiple New York Times best-selling author and somebody that I have read and followed for years. Pam, thank you for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's a joy to talk to you today.
Please give listeners a little background. Where do you live and what do you do?
Where do I live and what do I do? You know, it's funny. I consider myself more of a child of the universe, but my home base is Lawrence, Kansas, a little university town where William Burroughs, you know, the beat poet, lived the last part of his life. In fact, he lived there more than anywhere else. It's just a little fun, funky university town, not too far from Kansas City. But I travel a lot. As we were talking earlier, I've been a travel writer most of my life. So even though my home base in Kansas, which I love, beautiful sunsets, you know, it's really a beautiful place, but that people don't recognize, which is part of my thing. Like, I'm going to have people recognize things they don't recognize. But anyway, so I go all over the world. I've been to, you know, everywhere, and I often will, you know, go a place for a month and live and work. So yeah, that's kind of my jam. I'm kind of a little bit of everywhere, a gypsy kind of person.
Well, and since you have been all over the place and we talked briefly about travel, I just have this wanderlust in me. I want to see so much and experience. What is maybe your top one or two places you've been or want to go back to?
You know, that's funny that people always ask me that question. I have one of two answers usually. It's just like you don't always want pizza for a meal. You know, we want different things. So it kind of depends on what you want as far as what your favorite place is. The other answer I often give is the last place that I was, because it's like right in my mind and I'm so in love with it, because I fall in love with everywhere I go. But I'll tell you, you know, you mentioned Cape Town. That is a beautiful city. I really like Cape Town a lot. Just to give you some answers. Love Cape Town, love Austria, had a very remarkable experience in India. So I don't know. I mean, I like a lot of places, but I wouldn't want to just go back to one place over and over again. You know, I mean, I really do like the variety, and I still have some places on my bucket list. You know, I haven't been to Chile or Argentina yet. And both of those I'm quite eager to go to. Haven't been to Bali either. So there's another one, but have been to a lot. I don't know. I've been like 70, 80 countries, something like that, but there's still new ones to explore.
Well, and I want to talk, one of the books that I first found out about you was E Squared, which was very popular. When was that written? It was years ago.
You know, it came out in 2013.
Dang.
And
okay.
It's really interesting, the story behind it. And I had written that exact same book 10 years early, had published it. It was called God Doesn't Have Bad Hair Days. And it did nothing. I mean, nothing. Partly because the publisher of that book, I think, hired a fundamentalist Christian publicist, and that wasn't the book at all. It was just more like God. So then I set it aside. I wrote 3 books for National Geographic on, you know, traveling. But then I always loved that book with the experiments, because I thought, you know, that's a way to get people to really realize that these principles work. So I repackaged it. It did have 10 experiments in the original. And so I repackaged it with 9 experiments. I actually changed it to one of the experiments, but basically it was the same book. And it just took off like a I don't know, a phoenix. I mean, it just really went crazy. On the New Year's Eve before 2013, when it came out January 27th or something, or 2013, but the New Year's Eve before, I was in Savannah, Georgia, visiting my sister. We were out watching the fireworks on the beach. And so I took a big stick, and in the beach, in big giant letters, I wrote, E Squared will be an international bestseller. And then I let the waves come in and, you know, take it out into the universe. And I mean, that book has been translated into 40 languages. It is, you know, #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. And it's funny because it was my 16th book. You know, I've been at this writing game for quite a while. Again, you know, because that's what I love to do. But for whatever reason, it just took off. I mean, it was all social media. The publisher didn't put a lot of money into it. I mean, once they started seeing that it was popular, but it just really, I think, word of mouth, it just took off like I said, just woo, it everywhere. You know, I to this day get emails from people that send me something like, "You are never going to believe this," and I always say, "Yes, I'll believe it," because that's what I write about. So anyway.
Well, and it's one I go back to and I recommend it to many friends because it's an easy one to understand the power of your thoughts and your focus and how to manifest. But I want to point out there on that New Year's Eve, you declared to the universe that it was going to be an international bestseller, and it was. So there was no doubt, right? Like you said it and you trusted.
Well, and one of the things I talk about too is, I had written the book before it was published, and it, you know, basically didn't do anything. And I back then probably had affirmed that too. But I think the big change is I changed my frequency. We talk a lot about frequency, and we're all energy beings. In fact, that's why those wands, that experiment with the wands is so powerful, because people can see what their thoughts are doing, so what their energy is sending out there. So I think at the time E squared came out, I was just ready. I was on a much more joyful, happy frequency. I was open to all the gifts. I was aware of this bigger thing, much more so than before. So I think, possibly my frequency changed than, what had happened 10 years earlier. Because again, I had affirmed when it came out as God doesn't have bad hair days as well. So anyway, I think a lot of it has to do with our frequency and partly what we're expecting, but also what we're willing to notice and be aware of.
Well, and that's something that I preach about is self-awareness, because you can't change what you don't know. So, do you have kind of a how to or to help people become more aware of their conscious and I know subconscious thoughts, but how do you consciously create? We all have desires. So, how do we step into what you call the FP? How do we, because what I understand is everything we want is already available to us. It's just about aligning and connecting with it. So how do you teach someone how to do that?
Well, one of the things I say is that we animate into our experience whatever we put our attention upon. So if we put our attention upon the limited beliefs that we've had all our lives, the paradigms that we were taught from our culture, from our families, then that's what we're going to see. That's what we're going to animate into our life. So I think the biggest tip is to let go of all the beliefs, all the paradigms, all the things that you were told is the way the world works, and be open to this idea that maybe the universe really does want to connect with you, bless you, guide you, to really be open to that possibility. And I think that's the reason E squared was such a big hit, is that, we've heard this kind of thing forever, right? This is nothing new. Even the Bible says, ask and ye shall receive. But because I set it up in the framework of these scientific experiments, I actually used the scientific method. You had a hypothesis and everything, and I gave 48 hours. So people are actively paying attention to what's happening. And I think, so it's like you couldn't miss it. And I think I really wanted people to know this. And so with these experiments, you give it a try and you realize, wow, this is amazing. So I think that's why it ended up being so popular. So yeah, I just say people give it a try. Whatever beliefs that you have right now, just put them on hold for 48 hours. Most of those experiments are 48 hours. So if you can just put your certainties, the things your conditioning on hold for 48 hours and just see what could possibly happen. So I think that's a real important key thing, is to just let go of all those beliefs that you've been taught, that have been brained into you. I heard something the other day, I thought this is really true. We're not so much, we talk about human conditions. It's more like we're humans conditioned. We're conditioned to be a certain way when there's just so much. So the human condition is really about humans being conditioned, because there's so much more possible. And we are connected to this much bigger field of infinite potentiality, or the quantum field, as they talk about in quantum mechanics. But we are connected to that, and we interact with that on a regular basis. And you say, how do you teach people to do that? The truth of it is, you're already doing it. Everybody's doing it. I guess the question is, how are you going to do it in a way that better serves you? Because so many of us still believe that we're limited, that there's something wrong with us. Just these thoughts that are constantly parading across our brain. And when you start believing in that, you believe in these beliefs that, money is limited and hard to come by. We have all these beliefs in scarcity, there's just not enough to go around. So these kind of beliefs create the situation that we find ourselves in. So if we can let go of those beliefs, that what if the world is abundant? And what if there is this force that wants to connect with you? Just give it a try. I'm not asking for you to totally turn over your beliefs. Just give it a try for a short amount of time. So that's basically, I guess, what the book did, is it gave people a reason to maybe put aside all their conditioning for 48 hours and just see what would happen. And then when things start happening, then your belief only grows in the bigger picture, in this, this field of infinite potentiality.
And I've had a lot of fun doing this over the years. I remember even The Secret when it came out years ago. There was an example in the movie, something as simple as a cup of coffee or parking spaces.
Mhm.
And to this day, and it can be on, opening day for the Colorado Rockies, which parking is, quote, people's belief impossible. And I can get front row parking like right in front of the stadium. I have so much fun with it. And I think that's what I've been able to tap into is the fun, the joy. And then it's like, ooh, if I can do that, what else can I do? And I come from an angle of curiosity and excited anticipation. But you're right, a lot of the beliefs, and I hear it all the time, especially my age group, is let's talk about money. Everybody's so focused on what is or not having enough, and then they wonder why that continues. Or when it comes to dating, that, there's nobody good left, or I'll never find anybody, or dating is so hard. How do you help people become aware of like their repetitive thoughts to help them realize that's a limitation you've imposed?
Well, how do I help people become aware of it? I think, well, meditation's a good process for getting in touch with, all the thoughts that go through your head. I think, making it a priority. Well, I'm a student of Course of Miracles, and one of the things that I say every morning is, Holy Spirit, I want you to lead my day. I want you to show me, what's going to happen today. And the minute I start having thoughts of myself, I ask Holy Spirit, help me see it differently. And Holy Spirit might be a word with baggage for people. I mean, that's one of the things I did in each square. I tried to take away all that baggage because, in fact, I talk a lot about the myths about God and religion and some of that kind of stuff. And I think it gets in the way. But the Holy Spirit is this field of infinite potentiality, basically. And it, again, wants to guide us. So I simply say, help me see this differently. So I ask for help to see things differently. I don't want to rely on the limited beliefs and conditioning that have driven my life. I want to be open to the bigger possibility. I mean, when you think about it, we live on this tiny planet hurtling through space, with a zillion galaxies. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just kind of funny how we could think that whatever we believe, or, how could even this big, giant, massive field of potentiality even work in this little limited neural system that we have? It's just so much bigger. And so, I don't know. I just always want to be open to possibilities. As far as teaching other people, again, I think just doing those experiments and trying it, give it a try. Be willing to suspend your judgment for a short amount of time. Just try it. Try it.
I,
You'll like it, as that commercial used to say.
I like that. Be willing to suspend your judgment.
Yes.
So when we talk about paradigms and paradigm shifting, I think this is kind of a buzzword and something people talk about. But what does that even mean?
Well, okay. I mean, a good example, this election that's going on, or, that's, in my opinion, already solved. But, some people believe it's one thing and some people believe it's another thing. You think, how can we be in the same reality? But the truth of it is, we're in different paradigms on how we're seeing things. So, a paradigm basically is a set of beliefs that is, and that's your framework for how you see the world. It's like your blueprint, I guess, for how you think the world works. And if you buy into this idea that if there's scarcity, that the world there's only so much to go around, if you buy into that, you're going to be limited. You're going to only get what you're able to allow yourself to see. So that's a paradigm. That's a belief system. So I guess I call a paradigm a belief system or a conditioning. And again, I talk a lot about, quantum physics in my books. And there's a term called collapsing of the wave. And what happens is there's this infinite number of possibilities, but once someone observes it, this observer effect, they collapse the wave, meaning the world cannot be any other way other than the way you've decided that it is.
Mm.
And it's something they've proven over and over again with quantum physics, that once you decide, the classic experiment is, is it a wave or is it a particle? And whatever you expect it to be, that's what you get. So it happens on a bigger level. And when you expect that the world's difficult or that's really hard, or you use the example of there's not enough men to go around, if you've collapsed that wave, that's the reality that you think is true. You create that for yourself. It's not true in the whole bigger picture, but for you, in the way that you've collapsed, that you've concretized into your life, that's what you're going to see. And we're all these little feedback loops. We just see the things that we expect to see. And, the biggest thing a person can do is to open their expectations, to begin to believe something to be bigger and better than what they can perceive at this point.
And do you believe, is that what E squared does? It helps you to break the pattern and to open just open to possibility?
Well, I kind of think of it as baby steps. But again, once you see that happening,
Yeah.
you realize, wow, maybe this stuff really does work. Because we've been paying lip service to this forever. So I think the purpose of E squared is to get some people have some, see it with their own eyes, to get some experience under their belt. And then, like you said, once you get the good parking spot, then you realize, wow, where else can I do this? So it just opens the door a crack. I mean, there's still a lot of opening we could all do because it's really easy to fall back into our old patterns. But just it's like opening the door. It's a way to, get your toe in the door. And I guess my highest hope is that people will continue to practice it and continue to explore what else they can do with these principles that I talk about in E squared. There's 9 principles. The first one is the do to buy. It's the fact that there is this field, there is this thing out there that wants to guide us and bless us and interact with us. So once we get that, and if we really can get that paradigm, and that means it's a whole lot bigger than we are, and there's a whole lot more possibilities than what we can conceive. So that's, once you can get that and just be willing to be open, then, all bets are off, or all bets are on, I guess, depending on how you want to say that.
I want to share a quick experiment I did with you of my own a few months ago. For shits and giggles, I decided to use your principles, but I tweaked it some. So it was a 14-day experiment. I wanted to manifest 10 grand because for me that was a law and I didn't know. So I let go of the how. I didn't say it had to come this avenue, but it was a 14-day experiment. So I knew how long and what, 10,000. And then every day I just woke up and I was like, how's it going to come today? By day 2, I had 4,500 come in. I was like, damn, I should have gone higher. And then by the end of the experiment, 10,600. So I was like, okay, this works. But I guess my question for you is, especially after doing the experiments, and I know they work because I've done them time and time again. I keep going back to that book. But if we know they work, what do you think? Why wouldn't we continue doing that every day to keep opening and more possibility and more joy and more? We do it and then it's like we fall off.
Well, these patterns are so ingrained within us, and we've been doing the other way. Like Course in Miracles says, this isn't a hard thing to do. It's just so different than how we're used to doing life. We've decided the way life is. And so even though we have these remarkable successes, like say with an experiment, it's just so really easy to get back into that rut. And it's so much out there in the ethers in everything. I mean, the message of scarcity is out there big time. I mean, that's what marketing is all about. Oh, you're not good enough. You need this. We hear this is drummed into us over and over and over again. So this is not a difficult process. Like the Course says, it's just so different that you have to be kind of vigilant and continue to ask, help me see this differently. Help me. When you notice those old paradigms, or those old thoughts, if you want to call it that old conditioning coming in, you have to immediately stop as soon as you recognize and go, no, this is not what I want. I help you to see it differently. So again, I think we need help from that, our connection to the bigger possibility. I think we can ask for help, and that's the only way we can really get out of it, because we are so conditioned. And so that's why we keep going back to it. It's easy. It's what we've done our whole entire lives. I mean, think about it. From the moment you're born, you're weighed and measured against the other babies in the nursery. I mean, this is the life that we're born into. So that starts right away. Am I good enough? Am I going to measure up? So to break these patterns takes vigilance. And I think the reason I like Course in Miracles and why I practice it for so long, because it's a daily practice. And it is, I mean, even an hour by hour practice, you recognize how quickly you do fall off the wagon, so to speak. And it gives you an opportunity to reset. And ideally, eventually it becomes second nature, where you don't have to think about it as much. It's just kind of your way of being. And the other thing that I find so encouraging, of course, in Miracles says, this is our natural way of being, this field of infinite potentiality. That is what's natural. That is what we're meant to be, connected to all, and, in love and in peace. That is our natural state. But again, we've been taught this other way of being. So we think that's the way it is, but it's not the way it is. And so that right there is encouraging, to recognize that this sense of joy and peace and love is who we are. It is the truth. And as you start practicing that, it becomes more and more apparent, and you recognize that, and you live your life out of that truth.
So something that came to mind when you were explaining that is, and it's a word I hear often, is to surrender, to let go. Because you said to ask for help. And I think a lot of people, that's hard because they don't, quote, want to let go of control. That's scary for people because they want to think they have control or certainty. So how do you surrender your beliefs or your conditioning, your patterns, to allow the FP to step in and help guide you?
Well, there's an old joke, somebody said, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? And the guy goes, practice, practice, practice. So it really is a practice. I mean, you can have success with the experiments in the book, and that's great, and it will open that door, but you have to continue to practice. And it's not like a scary practice or a rigorous, not fun practice. Like you mentioned, the joy. I mean, it's like, what could be more fun than approaching life this way, knowing that you're connected to this bigger thing, and that life is meant to work out for you, and that you have a purpose. I mean, why wouldn't everybody want to be doing this? I mean, it's just funny how why we would get into these patterns, but for whatever reason, that seems to be a conditioned human that we that we have come into this plane to overcome, I guess.
So something you've broached a couple times that I want to talk about is A Course in Miracles. And for some, they may have never heard of it, but was it maybe last year? I think maybe last year or the first of this year, but your book, A Course in Miracles Experiments. So my mom gave me the book, A Course in Miracles, years ago. Here in Denver, I used to go to a weekly meetup where we would talk about, what do you call it? A daily lesson.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it kind of is written in this hard to grasp language, but your humor and the way you approach it is just so relatable. So can you talk about what is A Course in Miracles and your book?
Yeah. Basically, the Course in Miracles is a rewriting of everything we think we know. But how it started, there were two professors at Columbia University, and there was a lot of department infighting. They weren't getting along. And the head of the department, it was like medical psychology at Columbia University, the head of the department threw his hands in the air one day and says, there has got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way than all this fighting, this backstabbing. So almost as if that request, his research assistant, Helen Schuckman, began channeling or having these thoughts come to her. And so the two of them together, the head of the department at Columbia and his research assistant, literally these thoughts would come through to her, or the channeling of A Course in Miracles. And then she would say them to him, and he would type them. And this went on for several years. I think maybe 7 years. They did this process till this entire book came out. And, basically they thought it was the answer to their issues, their problems, and their department started changing. But eventually they realized, this could work for other people as well. And so they mimeographed or Xeroxed off like 100 copies and sent it off to various people. And sure enough, people said, oh my gosh, this is great. This is a radical change in how we see the world. So it just kind of grew from there. And it's funny you said that about your mom gave you a copy and you couldn't really get into it. There's a question that people will often ask at any spiritual gathering: how many of you guys have the Course in Miracles? And pretty much everybody will raise their hand. But then I'll ask them, how many of you actually read it? And maybe one or two people will keep their hands up, because it is really hard to understand. And I'm sort of shocked that I've even stuck with it all these years, because I didn't understand it for a really long time. I'm still not completely sure I understand it, but maybe that's the surrendering, is knowing that I don't understand. That sort of has helped me, go forth with my life to use it to great advantage. But it's really, truly a rewriting of everything. It says that everything we believe in the world is completely upside down. Every single belief that we have is the opposite of what's really real. Like abundance, that is the truth of the world. I mean, you go look at a tree. How many leaves on a tree? You can't even count them. Or how many, you take a square foot of lawn, how many pieces of grass? The world itself is just abundant, but our beliefs that we have to have this and we have to have this and there's not enough, that is what's formed the reality for so many people. But the actual abundance, anyway, the whole idea is that everything we believe is the exact opposite of the truth. And that's kind of the Course in Miracles in a nutshell.
And A Course in Miracles, it's a year-long journey. There's a daily lesson, and sometimes it's I think even in the beginning, isn't it to like literally just look around your room and to attach no meaning to things.
Right, right. It's a rewriting of your mind. How the course works, there's a first section, it's a huge book. And the first section is the text, and it kind of explains the principles. But the actual mind training is this second section, which is the workbook. And that is the 365 lessons. There's something you do every day. It's not hard. It's not really, a big deal. It just takes the commitment to do it. And I've been, starting on January 1st, I start over again every year with the lesson. And I think one of the first lessons is I don't know what anything means. I don't understand. So we don't understand. I mean, that's once you get that, then all those doors are open to a whole new understanding coming in. And so first you have to and you don't have to believe it when you first start doing it. That's one of the things it says, this can seem ridiculous to you. Do it anyway, do it anyway. And just see what happens. Again, it's like a test. It's a big giant test. In fact, all my books, I have 2 books with experiments, E squared and E cubed. And both of them are spawned, directly from principles in the Course in Miracles. So that book has informed my work. My book, Think and Grow Rich, about gratitude, that's straight from Course in Miracles too. In fact, one of the best ways to get on this frequency and to have better luck, you're asking, what are some tips? Start focusing on what you have to be grateful for. We spend so much time talking about what we don't like, but I don't know how many of your listeners have heard me talk about my AA 2.0 program, but I mean, I feel like that really changed my life and even led to the success of E squared. And it's a real simple process. You get up in the morning. You've heard of AA, the 12-step program. Well, this is a simple, I'm all about smooth and easy. So it's a real simple program. There's 2 steps. First thing you say when you get up in the morning, step number 1 is something amazingly awesome is going to happen to me today. So you just set that intention. You don't know what it's going to be. You just know something. And I've gone on to do bodaciously brilliant and on and on and on. But anyway, amazing awesome. That's where the AA thing came from. And then the second thing is I have this little possibility posse, and I text 3 blessings from the day before to them. And so the thing about a lot of people are into gratitude, but this has to be something different. Every day I have to come up with a new blessing to report to them. So I often feel like I'm Lewis and Clark out there scouting blessings. I mean, that's what my attention, that's the thing I want to animate into my life. So that's what I'm focusing on, all the blessings. And sometimes people go, well, what are the blessings? Well, my goodness, your heart's beating. You don't have to tell it to do that. The sun came up this morning. I mean, so many blessings, but we're focused. We animate into all our disgruntlements instead of focusing on the blessing. So once you sort of shift that way of thinking, your perception, to thinking more about all the things you have to be grateful for. And the list is endless. I mean, I've been doing this now since E squared came out, so 2013, so 7.5 years. And, every day there's new blessings, new blessings, new blessings. I mean, they're really endless. Once you start recognizing, you realize there's more than you could ever even count or write down or send to your possibility posse.
Yeah. So I first heard about a gratitude journal. I was in elementary school. So I was probably like 8 years old watching Oprah.
Mm-hmm.
And I started a gratitude journal back then. Now I don't write it out, but every single night, and I've been committed to this since, well, I think around 8. But I think of 5 things from that day for which I am grateful. And it can be, the sunshine, a call from a friend. It's just, and I find those little things, because otherwise, and even when people come to me and, it's so easy. Misery loves company. People love to bitch and complain. But then I ask, and I kind of stop them in their tracks. I'm like, tell me something good. Tell me something you're grateful for. And it's amazing to watch how quickly that one question can shift their perspective, and then they can rattle off in a whole new direction by one question.
Yeah, one of the questions I like to ask too when people get on the pity pot, so to speak, is I'll say, well, what would you like to have happen? Nobody even thinks about that, like, this is happening, this is that. Well, what would you like to have happen? Just think about that for a change. So that's another good question to kind of stop me in your tracks.
No, I'm writing that one down. What would you like to have happen? I like that. Okay, so then question for you. I know A Course in Miracles is something you study and live by. What are some other, is there mentors or philosophies? What is something that keeps you going and momentum in your life to, live in this joyous gratitude state?
Well, I'd say Course in Miracles is my main teacher, but I've dabbled in all kinds of things. I mean, it's funny because when I wrote E squared, well, when I first wrote it as God Doesn't Have Bad Hair Days, it came out about the same time as The Secret. And my editor said, I don't get this. Your book is just like The Secret. Why is it so popular in your book? Because, basically it's saying the same thing. So anyways, so then I found out, like, when the E squared came out, oh, they picked it as the best law of attraction book. So I guess what I teach is law of attraction, or that is the term that everybody knows.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't know that I called it that in the beginning, because I don't know that I'd heard that term until later. So yeah, law of attraction. But all of that comes from Course in Miracles, saying that our thoughts are creating our reality. Basically, our thoughts, again, we're animating into our life whatever we put our attention upon. That's the bottom line. So what do you want to put your attention upon? So yeah, Course in Miracles has been my mainstay, but I've done tapping, being a Hay House author, used to go to, in fact, I've been to Denver to be at a convention there. So you meet a lot of other people. So, I've learned tapping from Nick and Jessica. So tapping, I like Ho'oponopono. I mean, there's just a lot of different spiritual practices that I've dabbled in. It's just Course in Miracles is the one I come back to, that I've stuck with year after year after year. And that's kind of remarkable for me, because I'm not a person that's necessarily that disciplined or that sticks with one thing. Again, when we're talking about travel, I want to go to new places. I want to see something different. But for whatever reason, I have stuck with Course in Miracles for a really long time. I'm probably on my 4th copy of the book. I washed one of them in the laundry one time. I mean, and they just wear out after a while. So I just keep, getting a new one and keep reading it and keep trying to change my thinking. It's not like you ever get there. I mean, it's infinite expansion and change that can happen, infinite love. So there's always, I'm like, okay, I've got it now. It's not like that. It's just like, it never ends. It's eternal. It's infinite. It's ongoing.
Question for you, because I love to give listeners a takeaway, something to put in the toolbox, a framework. So if you could, I don't know if this is a morning routine or like a 3-step program, or what can people do every single day to tap back into the FP, to get back on track?
Well, I think that gratitude practice, that AA 2.0 practice, is a really good one. It's so simple. It's so easy to do. So I guess I would suggest that for people.
Okay. And that's just declaring something amazingly awesome is going to happen to me today.
And then sending those blessings to get what I call possibility posse. It's 5 friends, and I text my blessings to them. And the good thing about having those people that are expecting it, and sometimes we'll let ourselves down, but we won't let our friends down. So that's why I suggest getting the little possibility posse or a group of friends. Like when we started doing this, we didn't call ourselves that. We just started doing that. And then when I realized that my thing was, I'd say something amazingly awesome is going to happen to me, I realized AA, and then I turned it into the AA 2.0. So, I kind of developed it as I went along, just because it was kind of, maybe not grammatically correct, but amazingly awesome. I mean, that was pretty inspiring in the beginning. Yeah. Now I've said it so many times, like I said, I've switched it up to something extraordinarily epic is going to happen to me today. But just putting that intention out there, and then going to the blessings right away, sending it. It's blessings from the day before, and I sent it to these 5 people. So that's a real easy thing. I mean, you start out before you have time for your crazy mind to start getting in. You just declare that something. I don't specify what's going to happen. I just put it out there to the universe that something amazingly awesome is going to happen today. So that's what I'm going to be looking for. That's what I'm expecting. That is what I'm animating into my life. So
I'm just curious, now that you've said that, can you name off the top of your head, like some amazingly awesome things that you declared that day that like happened for you, connections, or maybe something you had in the back of your mind and then it came to fruition? Like, I want some examples.
Oh, well, it varies. I've been doing this for, I guess, 7, 8 years now. So it might be everything from a free trip to Lake Tahoe is one day I had that. I mean, I guess as a travel writer, I've gotten lots and lots of amazing travel. So over the years, I've had a lot of those on my list. But again, it has to be different every time. Sometimes it might be as simple as some little kid smiled at me in the grocery store or something. So, it can be all different things. The point is to exercise your gratitude muscles to where you're thinking about it. You're actually looking for things to appreciate.
Yes. Well, and that might be your answer to this next question, but what is a key takeaway you want listeners to get from today's conversation?
Well, one of the things, because I get this question from time to time, and and it's kind of in the form of what's that one thing you put on a billboard or whatever. And for me, it's like we should be suspicious of the voices in our head because those voices in our head are the paradigm, the conditioned the conditioning, the judgments, the beliefs that we've been taught by our culture, by our families. So if we're suspicious of that voice, then we can be open to this bigger voice to come in. So I guess just to be suspicious of that little voice in our head. I call it in the Course in Miracles experiment, I call it the little ass hat. It's constantly trying to tell you, hey, you need to do this, or you better watch out, or, all those little messages that, fly through our head.
Yes, I love that. Okay, I'd love to wrap up the interview and ask you a few rapid fire questions.
Sounds good.
What is a quote or motto that you live by?
Wow. I love quotes. I collect quotes. Is there one I like above all else? I like the Course in Miracles quote, love created me like itself. So that's a good one.
Okay. What is a book you're currently reading or highly recommend?
Oh, wow. Well, I love Eckhart Tolle's books. So I'm not currently reading those, but I recommend those. The book I'm currently reading is a fascinating book about a guy who has been in San Quentin. He was, imprisoned in there from the time he was, I think, 18 or 19, and he's now 50, 60. But he took on a meditation practice that completely changed his life in San Quentin. So if he's able to find peace and joy and happiness in San Quentin, I think it's possible for all of us. Well, I know it's possible for all of us. But anyway, it's an inspiring book because, what he had gone through, just the social conditions he'd gone through to even, end up there. But then to be able to break free from all those thoughts in his mind in San Quentin is pretty remarkable. So that's the book I'm currently reading. So yeah, I can't remember the name of it, but it's written. The guy's name is Jarvis, or is it Jarvis's last name? Anyway, but it's good. It's good.
Okay. What advice would you give your younger self?
Just keep going, keep believing. My younger self had people telling me that I was crazy to want to work for myself and follow my dreams. So I kind of would say to my younger self, good for you. Glad you went ahead and kept moving in that direction that you believed was possible.
And final question for you, what's next for you? Are you currently writing a book or taking it easy? What's on the radar?
Well, I like to, do projects that I feel guided to do. So, as you may have read in some of my work, my daughter passed of a brain aneurysm 2 years ago, which was, a pretty difficult thing. And so I've been working, to stay connected to her. Again, that's a paradigm that, once we die, that's it. So that's been like the biggest PhD program for me. So I'm currently working on a deck of cards. And well, it's the coolest story. So this woman who had read my book, Art and Soul Reloaded, she's from Hamburg, Germany. And soon after I had posted a blog post about Taz dying, she sent me a flower that she'd painted. She's an artist, and this little glass butterfly that she had made. And she says, I am going to send you a flower because your daughter was as beautiful as a flower. And, butterflies are the window to the soul. I'm going to send you one of these every day for 50 or every week, 52 weeks. And, people say a lot of things like, oh, yeah, right, that's going to happen. She did it every single Saturday for an entire year. She sent me a different flower. She told me the meaning of the flower. And it was a really healing, beautiful thing for her to do for me. Someone she didn't even know. I mean, she had read my book, but, she didn't know me. She did this for me. And so I am hoping to take her flowers. That's what I'm working on now. In fact, I'm working on the proposal with little stories about our connection to the other side. I talk about some of those things in my books. I mean, I've always been interested in that topic, but now, of course, I'm even more interested in that topic. So there's just a little card deck. And so it's for a person who is grieving, and it's a way of staying connected with that person. For example, my daughter we had a little thing about hedgehogs. The first of the month, whoever would say hedgehog the other one first, we had a lucky month. It was just a crazy little game we played. Started when she was maybe grade school, junior high, whatever. So now on the first of the month, every month since well, I didn't start noticing until May. She passed in October. I get a hedgehog of some kind. Sometimes it'll come in on a text from her old phone. I mean, how does that happen? Sometimes I was doing an interview like this one day. It was happening to be May 1st. And the interviewer goes, "You're never going to believe there's just a hedgehog in my backyard." She never had a hedgehog. So every first of the month, my daughter will send me a sign. So basically, it's a bunch of stories like that about how we can have a connection to people on the other side. And it's just kind of encouraging stories to realize, again, it's so much bigger than we know. It's so much bigger than we know.
Well, especially the philosophy that we're all eternal, so that death isn't real.
Right.
I think you're into Abraham Hicks, but I listened to
Yeah, no, I like Abraham Hicks too. Yeah, like I said, I dabble in all of it. Well, of course, in miracles, one of the big tenets is, there is no death. There is no death. The Son of God is free. So our bodies, our temporary bodies, little meat suits, they're temporary. But who we are, our consciousness, that goes on. It is eternal. It is infinite. So that gives me great comfort. And I know, I'll actually see Taz again. At this point, I have to, develop other ways to communicate with her.
Well, I'm excited to see that project come out.
Yeah.
Pam, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your insight.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Heather. Have a wonderful day. Have an amazingly awesome day.